Welcome back to the Global Gratitude Summit. I'm Luann Saraga-Walters.
And I'm Sharon Saraga-Walters.
We are so excited today. We're actually going halfway around the world. Can you believe technology today? To speak with our guest who's on, and she has done some amazing work, and we're so grateful to have her on the show. She is passionate about the role that gratitude can play in enhancing not only our personal well-being, but also our relationships with others and improvements of society as a whole. For the past 2.5 decades, Dr. Kerry Howells has researched gratitude's particular effect in education, from school leadership and teaching to academic learning, and she's witnessed firsthand how gratitude improves student-teacher relationships and student learning. Recently, she's taken up research projects in the areas of the role of gratitude in elite sport and also the role of gratitude in cancer care. Her book, Gratitude in Education, A Radical View, is an excellent read, available on Amazon and really well thought out. It's changing the educational system and structure of education in Australia and around the world. Dr. Howells is taking her research global, and she has actually spoken before the NGO at the United Nations on gratitude and human dignity, which also aptly fits her studies of gratitude within the educational framework. And we're just really honored and grateful to have you with us today, Dr. Howells. Thank you so much for joining us from Tasmania, Australia.
Who would have known, hey?
Well, it's really fantastic. So we're going to start at the very beginning, and that's to find out a little bit more about you. So Sharon?
Yes, and welcome, and thank you for being here. What prompted you to start this gratitude in education?
Well, I have always been interested in gratitude as a way to address a lot of the adversity that had happened in my life. Sometimes I just got pushed up against the wall, and the only thing that worked as a way out was being grateful for what I did have. And I had a group of students where I was teaching in a university in Australia, and I was teaching a course called Cultural and Ethical Values, and I thought that it was just an awesome opportunity for the students to be able to study philosophy and study all the greats like Plato and Aristotle and Augustine, and they were going to apply these theories to their other courses such as law and business and journalism and other courses I was studying. But we were at stalemate because they really didn't want to do the course, and I thought it was a really great opportunity. So after teaching this course for a couple of semesters to different groups of students, I just had enough, and I just kind of put aside the curriculum and everything that was needed to be done and just talked to them about what their attitude was to their learning. And something really phenomenal started to happen because it was the first time that they had actually thought that about the attitude that they brought to their studies was actually going to have an impact on their learning. And we just experimented with a whole lot of different things. And the thing that seemed to stick was gratitude. So that then became my research area. So thanks to my students.
Wow. You know, it strikes me, and as I was reading that reflection in your book, you took the time to listen to them, you know, in doing that, which was fantastic. So you said you tried a lot of different things, and the thing that actually stuck was gratitude, but you have a really interesting way to describe the need for gratitude, called appropriately Why Gratitude, in your book. And I'd love for you to read that passage, if you would, for us today.
So why gratitude? We live in a time when we are constantly exposed to the suffering of those less fortunate than ourselves, or those who've had the world at their feet snapped away by an earthquake, a wave, a bomb, a fire, or a rampant storm. As they plummet into chaos or flee for refuge, we are summoned to answer just how to respond to the millions reaching out for our regard. If we have our own fortunes intact for the moment, just one glimpse of other suffering can, if we allow it, generate a deep moral questioning of how we should react. A common refrain is that we should be grateful for what we have. But for gratitude to be an effective and moral response, we would need to embrace it as more than something that makes us feel good or reminds us of how good we have it. For if we were to meet gratitude face to face, she would say, take action that serves others, give back, give up, say sorry, let go, clear the air and connect. We are in danger of staying with an impoverished sense of gratitude if we only entertain it at the level of our intellect, or indeed if we consider it in isolation from its meaning in our interacting with others. To reach into the true meaning of gratitude, we need to engage with it through action and discover an embodied understanding through our lived experience, our connectedness to the other.
I love
Wow,
that.
that's
That
amazing.
is such a powerful passage for the
Yes.
viewers and listeners who are joining us with the Global Gratitude Summit. That one paragraph, Dr. Howells, when I read that, I read it several times because there's so much in it. And your reflection on gratitude, I love that you said, so that it has an effective, so that it is an effective and moral response. So this isn't simply an appreciative thank you, that there is action toward something, that wow, you packed a lot into that, which leads me to, you know, as a PhD, as a researcher, as a doctor who's really passionate about this, you've spent over 2 decades, almost 2.5 decades, researching gratitude. Your idea of gratitude, though, seems to be at a more evolutionary level, maybe, than a lot of people are used to hearing. And I'd love for you to talk about how you've come to explore and understand the concept of gratitude. So please dive into that a little bit.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a philosopher of education, not a psychologist. So it gives me a different way into thinking about gratitude. And philosophers look at concepts and they look at the application of those concepts and unpack their relevance and their meaning. And so I sort of see myself as a custodian of the concept of gratitude and protective of it, because if it is only conceptualized in that one-way process where I'm just grateful for what I receive and how it makes me feel good, I don't think that we're really talking about true gratitude, or what I call deep gratitude, because that's a really important starting point, because of course we have to respond with our heart and be grateful for what we have. But if it doesn't then translate into action, then it doesn't really have its true meaning and its truly transformative effect, especially in society where we're trying to revolutionize society through our actions of gratitude, but also trying to bring about greater interconnectedness with the other. And particularly in my context in education, trying to find ways in which we can actually act on our gratitude so it has much more of a transformative effect. So I really believe that gratitude is not just a feeling, it's an action. And I'm not the only one that has formulated this, but I was one of the first to actually talk about that action aspect of it in education. Mm-hmm. And then we have to ask ourselves, well, if it's an action, how do we act in the midst of our adversities, such as the ones I've just read out, mm-hmm. where things have just been snapped away from us, which is happening to us all around the world. And how do we act when that happens to others? That's really an important moral dimension of gratitude. And if we're just thinking about gratitude on that superficial level, then trying to be grateful at the same time as all this adversity is happening can be really really conflicting for people, because they're just finding it really hard, and then they give themselves a really hard time because and teachers give themselves a really hard time in the classroom because they're having a really difficult class and they have someone coming in and saying, oh, gratitude's going to help your students learn better. And then they feel really conflicted because they can't feel gratitude at that time. So I think a more accessible dimension of gratitude is not just about gratitude as an action, but also gratitude as a practice. So we have to let ourselves off the hook a bit and understand that we just need to work on our gratitude step by step in a really purposeful, intentional way. And another dimension of gratitude that's really important that people tend to sort of trip over time and again is this non-reciprocal dimension of gratitude that I'm a real advocate of. So that we're not practicing gratitude so we get something back in return, and we're not practicing gratitude so that another person will change. And for teachers, for example, that's a really hard one to grasp. And even though I say it in the workshops, they come back and say, oh, but I sent gratitude letters to the parents and I got nothing in return. This gratitude stuff's not working, because we're so used to an outcomes-based orientation in teaching. Like, it's all about what we do and how that action has an impact on our students. So to turn that around with gratitude and say, no, we just express gratitude for gratitude's sake and not to get something back from another, that's a really quite a deep and quite complex way in which we need to think about gratitude, but an important dimension of it.
It's a much meatier way of looking at gratitude and the practice of gratitude. You bring up gratitude in the classroom, and that's a great example of saying, well, how do teachers actually parlay this when they're trying to get something going? So Sharon's going to take us now into the classroom with our next question.
Yeah, so why is it important for students and teachers to have gratitude? And which comes first with them, with the student or the teachers?
Well, most teachers want it to come first with the students. So I get invited into many schools now, and they go, I want you to come and sort my students out. They're so entitled and they're so taking things for granted. And I'm sure if they had a bit of gratitude, my life would be much easier. And I go, no, I can't do that.
Yes, fix my classroom, right.
So I have to... my experience has taught me from my own practice as an educator with my university students that if I walk into the classroom without having thought about gratitude and actually am a little bit resentful, then that has an impact on the students. And my own experience and being really honest with my own reflection on how my inner attitude is really impacting on my students has made me turn more and more towards a whole approach for teachers and school leaders, which is what this book and my workshops are all about. So my answer is a very clear answer that, first of all, we need to work with the school leaders. And then I work with them for a whole term. And then in terms of them practicing gratitude, and also in that time really understanding the complexities and the challenges, because it's really hard to bring people on board with a gratitude initiative if you haven't lived it and understood that it's not as simple and straightforward as it first seems, especially the kind of gratitude that I'm advocating. And then after that, then teachers come on board for a whole term and they take up gratitude practices. And then after that, they find that the students may not even need an intervention of gratitude because they have seen it modelled with the teachers and school leaders. But most importantly, I talk about this inner dimension of gratitude, which is an inner attitude. And the inner attitude of the teacher and the school leader is really impacting on the students. And we know this because when we go into schools where principals, school leaders have an inner attitude of gratitude, you can just feel it from the moment you walk in. From the moment you park your car there, that vibration of the leader is really impacting on the school. And the same with classrooms. And I've had lots of examples where in schools where teachers go, oh, that's just like this teacher, and this teacher is renowned for their gratitude, and they say that their classrooms are really heavenly and the students are much more engaged than any other classes. So we don't have to look far to be able to see this phenomenon in action. So it's really, it is really important for students to practice gratitude. And that's where I started with my students, because education is a dynamic of giving and receiving and the gift. And that's why gratitude can be really well sort of superimposed or integrated with education, because gratitude is also about giving and receiving and the gift. And there's a giving dimension of gratitude and there's a receiving dimension of gratitude. And that's why I'm saying that we need to be open to not only what we receive, but also what we give. And so when you
And that's where you're saying don't have an expectation of it because it's the act of the giving that has the action. Is that what you're, okay.
That's right. But for students, in most education systems, we have positioned them really strongly in the position of receiver. So that has actually really put a real halt on their ability to be more engaged in the education system or in their learning, because they're very entrenched in being in receiving mode. And similarly, teachers have been very entrenched in giving mode, so that they give their knowledge, they give their time, they give their expertise. And so this is about students being much more open to what they receive from their students, what they're receiving, what they're giving to their education and to their learning, and teachers being much more open to what they're receiving from their students. So we're putting in a whole new dynamic into education, making it really alive.
That's amazing.
So that there's a giving and receiving dimension going on, and so teachers are reporting less burnout and less stress and much greater well-being, because they're putting themselves much more in receiving mode. And students report more engagement, more connectedness, because they're thinking about what I can give to my learning situation, to my fellow students, to my teacher, to the school, in my gratitude practice, rather than just I'm coming in to receive because I've paid this money and my parents send me to a good school and they're working hard, all that kind of rhetoric around education that we have, and the language around it. So students are clients and teachers are providers, and all that kind of economic rationalism. Gratitude just comes in and it kind of blows it all away. And so, let's have a really healthy dynamic here. Let's make education really alive, which is because you can't. Everything in the world is reliant on this giving and receiving dynamic, isn't it?
And I love the way you describe that is amazing, because you don't really think of it that way. There's something that, this truly is a radical view. It's you're taking it and turning it upside down and shaking the coins out of its pockets and saying, wait a minute. And what you talk about is from the concept of the student simply coming in with the outside of gratitude practice, coming in traditional cultures, educational cultures, coming in and expecting this, and there's no joy in that, because it becomes talk about that a little bit, because I loved the way you described it, that once they realize they can become engaged through this practice of gratitude, they come alive with that was phenomenal to me.
Yeah, thank you. It was phenomenal to me to realize that, actually, because way back those 20 more years ago at the university, when I first started introducing this, one of the things that I realized, and I say it in the first chapter of my book, is that students are really thirsty to know how to be more engaged. So they're really open to hearing about all of these suggestions. It's not something that we have to kind of like really convince them to come in on board with, but they actually really want to know how to be in the classroom so that I can learn better. So we shouldn't be too afraid it is a radical view, but they want to know the answer to this question. So that's another kind of phenomenon that I am really, really interested in, because I think we shy away from introducing them to the question of how to be engaged. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very, very important that we invite them into a recognition of what they can give, because they have so much to give. Like, they have so much to give, and if they come into the classroom with that awareness, today I can give this, that's automatically going to be a really big game shifter, isn't it? Because it's not their fault, actually. I don't believe that they're in receiving mode and that they're in a sense of entitlement that is described. I think it's really the way it's been set up by the education system, and we need to change that. Yeah.
So how are gratitude and trust related in the school context?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important question, because I think my understanding is that student disengagement is the core quest of most educators. Like, how do I get my students more engaged? And I believe that students orientate themselves towards where there is trust, and they have their radar up really high for where they can find a trusting space in the classroom with their friends. And the more they don't have that trusting relationships with other elders in their other people in their lives, like parents or peers, that radar is up really high, because it's a very deep need to find a space where I can feel trust. And trust comes when they feel they're not being judged, when they feel they're being valued, when they feel they're being appreciated, when they feel like what they have to give is being really acknowledged and invited. And so gratitude comes into the whole situation by asking them by a teacher genuinely and sincerely, because they also have a radar up for the opposite, genuinely and sincerely recognizing the value of this student and expressing that in some way to the student, and refraining from judgment and really trying to empathize with where they're coming from. And gratitude really helps with empathy as well. So that's my short answer. I've got lots of stories. Of people, of teachers who have really engaged students because they've really gathered the trust of their students. Their students really trust that they feel safe with them and they really feel valued. There's a really strong correlation there.
I'm kind of curious with that. How do the students react? I mean, I'm thinking not being judged, valued. Is that received by all the students, or does it take time for them to take in all that? That's because it's a lot of goodness. And where is it uncomfortable for some students?
I think there's an art to doing this, and good teachers, they do it with a smile. They do it with the tone of voice. They do it. They find ways with each. I've got one lovely educator in mind who's a brilliant Japanese teacher here in Australia, and she, like, students just run up to her, and teachers going, "Oh, but that student hates me. Why do they love you?" And she just says, "I just smile and I just care for them. I just love them." And she really does genuinely love them. But I think your question is really important, because it comes back to this idea of gratitude as a practice. Mm-hmm. So it's not like a one-off thing. It's not like, oh, okay, I've listened to this video and I'm now going to go and just establish trust with my students, especially with difficult students, and especially if it's not your personality as a teacher. Many people have signed up to be a teacher just because they're great at content, they're great at maths, they want to just go in and teach the content. So this is a journey. And it's a really, really, really worthwhile journey, but it's not something that you just get overnight. I really believe in this being a slow movement and a cultural change in the schools, and one student at a time, and not taking students who are too difficult, like not rushing out and going, "Oh, okay, gratitude, yeah, I'll go out to my most difficult student and just value them," because that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. We need to start where it's easy and build up that practice, and then move to another student and another student. And it's really interesting, because when students can see a greater warmth towards their fellow students, they automatically start to trust a bit more, because they see a greater connection going on.
We're going a little bit longer with this one because it's just fascinating. And I have to ask you this question. You mentioned it earlier, so I just wanted to bring it up too. You mentioned something called deep gratitude, and I know that's on your website as well. What does that mean?
Well, I think it's a culmination of all the things that I've talked about already, which is, it's not just about surface felt gratitude. It has to be action, and it has to be relevant to the person, and has been meaningful. But there's also, I think gratitude is the parent of all virtues, which is what Cicero said. which is why it's so powerful and why it's taking off all around the world, because we're looking for ways in which we can develop our character, and gratitude is a really strong way of doing that. But I think we need to remember that it stands on pillars. And so I've theorized that there's 6 pillars of gratitude. So one is humility. So we can't really be practicing gratitude unless we're humble enough to recognize what we receive from another. Like, that's a real act of humility, to open ourselves up to what we receive. Mm-hmm. And another one is relatedness. So what I was saying before was, you know, we need to build a relationship with the other person before we can truly know them enough to be able to express gratitude to them in a way that's meaningful to them. Another one is empathy, so that we can put ourselves in the other person's shoes and know how to be able to do this well. Integrity is another, so that we really need to be able to do this in a way that's very authentic to us. And another one is a sense of self-regard, so that we are not, it's not about being grateful at our own expense. So it's not about going off and trying to do all this without also being grateful to ourselves and having clear boundaries and having a clear sense of self, because that's where gratitude can get really skewed. And we think, oh, well, gratitude is really important, so I just need to put up with abuse or put up with bullying behavior because I'm supposed to be grateful. So self-regard is really important. So to go into really deep gratitude, we need to also see that there's other things that need to be in play for us to really go into this deeper gratitude. But I'll give your viewers a handout that I have on that, a PDF I have on that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow. Whew.
It's just, it's incredible. And you know, you can first see how you are living, have you done the work for yourself about gratitude, the same way you teach the teachers to have it within themselves. You're seeing it with you, really, how it comes across to us. And it's amazing, the power, all those words, the humbleness, that it's just so, I feel so, it's so well received, what you have to say in your research and what you're doing. And you're just truly a gift. And thank you so much for being on this summit with us. I'm so moved. Truly moved.
You know, it is such a joy to have discovered, well, we discovered you for ourselves, but you know, the work that you're doing has already transformed so many lives. And we are really grateful that now that you're in ours, because your words, the way you communicate them, your passion, you're really speaking from your heart, and that's evident. And we're just really grateful that you took the time to be with us on the summit. So thank you so much, Dr. Howells. You're an amazing person, and you're really helping people develop skills, both as teachers, administrators, but also as young people who will carry that ability with them. They'll take those skills with them for the rest of their lives, and maybe they will also, you know, ripple effect, teach others how to authentically connect with another human being through gratitude. So your work is very amazing, and we're really grateful that you're doing it.
We've got to get you to the States now, and
I want to come to the States. I want to come to the States.
We're gonna hold that vision.
I wanted to let everybody know as well that they can reach you, they can reach out to you, they can see more about you, they can find your book, Gratitude and Education, A Radical View, and all of this information is available on her website, kerryhowells.com. We'll put that in the credits as well. So thank you again, Dr. Howells, for being with us.
Very much. Thank you. It's been lovely. And thank you very much for all your efforts in getting this out into the world.